Dan, I got to ask you, did it rain last weekend?
I believe it rained. I believe that it was raining more than it was not raining the entire weekend. It was nothing but rain, it seemed like.
I wonder why it was raining and why does it matter? It just seems like this one particular weekend. I know
Yeah,
that you had said that it just always rains on that one weekend. What happened on that weekend?
it was the weekend of the Midwest Firewood Frenzy. And yes,
Oh,
indeed, whatever day the frenzy is planned for, whatever it is, he pretty much now can guarantee it's going to rain. 3 for
yeah.
3.
Rain, rain, go away. I know that we have had a very wet spring, and I don't know, are we in summer right now or not? Maybe.
Yep. Yes, we are.
But I think I saw a statistic. We have only had 2 weekends all spring where it has not rained.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would just imagine that you were going to have rain on your weekend up there.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, a nice drizzle or like a few scattered showers.
Uh huh.
The week before I looked at the forecast and there was, I think it was like a 68% chance of rain on Saturday. And then by the Wednesday before, it had moved to a 100% chance. So we knew it was going to rain. But what
Uh huh.
actually ended up being kind of a blessing was that most of the rain came Friday all day and Friday night. And then Saturday morning by about 9:30, 10 o'clock, there was a break in the rain for maybe 3, 4 hours.
But you probably had puddles and soft ground.
Oh, yeah. There was water everywhere. Everywhere.
If you would have wore your new pair of sneakers, you would have been upset.
You would have, yeah, you would have had to been doing some scrubbing and cleaning to get them back to the new condition.
Oh my. How about parking? Did anyone get stuck in the mud?
Nope. The
No.
actually the ground out there was, it held water just because it was raining so hard and so much, there was standing water, but then it did end up like kind of drying up, or like just there was no problems with parking. No one got stuck.
Okay.
So
All
it
right.
was good.
Well, that's good to hear. Well, I want to tell everyone out there, hello. This is Joe and Dan. We are the Wood Hounds, and the one common and resolute standard that we have on our podcast is we never, ever complain about the weather. And I see no reason why to start that today, because we are here to talk about the big weekend in the firewood industry that happened in Merrill, Wisconsin.
No, Eau
And it's
Claire, Wisconsin.
excuse me, Eau Claire, Wisconsin,
Yes.
one of those Wisconsin towns that you hear about. And it was at the Wolfe Ridge, I don't know, what do you call that? A facility, the
Manufacturing
property,
facility.
the
Yep.
manufacturing property. And it is I guess, a regional kind of a firewood interest where it draws people from pretty far away. But it is a Wolfe Ridge operation. So when I was talking like with you, this wasn't a Dan from Back 40 Firewood production.
No,
You didn't have anything to do with it. You just showed up.
correct. Originally, the very first Firewood Frenzy, I kind of helped organize and kind of planned out and worked with Chris Wolfe at Wolfe Ridge because he had the location and the space to have something. And then we did it a second year, again, rain, both first and second year. And then the
Yeah.
third year, I was kind of busy and I know Chris had some stuff going on. So we just skipped the third year. And now Bob Nelson, who is now with Wolfe Ridge Manufacturing, came in and decided, let's do it again. So he planned out and organized this year's Firewood Frenzy and made the mistake of, I guess, inviting me because the rain was once again a factor.
Yeah. So Bob is the new he is the new person in charge.
Yes. Yep.
That's I was laughing because I was thinking, Good for Bob. His new that's his hazing opportunity at his new job was to run the Firewood Frenzy.
But all in all, it was still a great event. I mean, they had a big tent, a huge 40 by 60 tent set up. They had other tents around for like different splitters to be under, and I was under my own little tent. So it was still, the rain was a factor, but it didn't stop. I don't. Well, it may have stopped a few people from coming just by looking at the forecast, but it didn't
Yeah.
stop from having a good time at the event.
Yeah. So it wasn't a washout.
No.
And there was still, what is what's the core essence of the Firewood Frenzy? Is it showcasing the Wolfe Ridge machines? Is it just, hanging out with people that enjoy this kind of stuff? Was it making firewood? What was it?
I think it was all of the above. Mostly, though, I think it was just kind of like a Wolfe Ridge open house slash demo day
Uh-huh.
to come out, see the splitters. Chris did give a couple tours of the factory or the facility ever since, because he's expanded now twice in the last few years.
Yeah.
So it was really everyone that went on the tour said it was great. Hearing the story about how Chris started in his garage only
Right.
8 years ago. It
Wow.
was only 8 years ago that he built his first splitter out of his garage, and ever since then he's just continued to grow bigger and bigger, and now has this huge facility that they can
Yeah.
make all kinds of machines, and they actually do some other custom fabrication work for other companies. So it's pretty cool. It's
That's awesome to hear.
pretty great
I love
story.
hearing that. I love hearing that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
about just humble beginnings. And I met Chris and spoke with him personally up in Maine last year at a show. And that's where I had heard, the story of how it all started for him. And then, so now he's got a lot of employees. He's got a pretty big operation from what I understand. And I have heard through the grapevine that Chris has an A+ reputation for, how he runs the business, how he treats his employees, how he values them. And I have heard just excellent things about everything that goes on up there.
absolutely. Yep. It's top of the line in craftsmanship, starting there with the machines he builds, and then the customer service he provides. And then I think just his way of innovating and bringing in, people in the positions that, can do a good job. For instance, Bob Nelson. I mean,
Yeah.
he got Bob Nelson to join his team, and I think that was a huge, you know,
Boy, that
I
was a
guess,
home run,
yeah,
wasn't it?
that was
Oh my gosh.
hit it out of the park with that one.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no kidding. And you've seen the impact that Bob has had with Wolfe Ridge on,
Yep.
the social media presence, the interactions that they get at the trade shows and all. I can't speak enough about Bob. I think he's awesome.
It was fun talking with him because he's been to probably hundreds of expos and shows, and he's always been just setting up like whatever booth that he is running. But in
Yeah.
this case, he had to set up the whole event, so it was a little different. You could tell it was like just a little different twist to the whole what all needed to be done. You had just things to
Yeah.
think about and things to do, but he did great. I mean, he accommodated everyone. I had heard no complaints from anyone.
Uh-huh.
It was a
So
great
tell me
job.
about it now. Tell me about the people. How many people would you say showed up?
Oh, there had to have been well over 100 and some. I'm not exactly sure. What was interesting was that at 10 o'clock in the morning was when Chris did his first tour of the facility. So there was a whole bunch of people there, between 9 and 10, and then they all went on the tour. So then people who came like at 10:15, say, they walked back to the grounds, and it was like there was no one around because
Yeah.
everyone was in the building taking the tour. So it was kind of hard to judge at any given time how many people were there, but
Uh-huh.
it was a good turnout. I was surprised at how many people showed up, given the fact that the radar and the forecast didn't
Oh
look very
yeah.
promising.
Yeah. Where would you say the draw was from? Were they mostly locals that came, or were they, people that did you know of anyone that drove long distance to get there?
Yeah, there were a few people that drove, I would say well over 10 hours. There was people, I think, from,
Holy cow, serious?
yeah, they were down like by in Missouri, and I know like Virginia. Phil from Woods Tree Farm drove up from Virginia.
Oh wow.
There were people from northern Minnesota who had like a 4 or 5 hour drive. But mostly, I would say the west central Wisconsin and kind of like the east Minnesota, Twin Cities area was probably the bigger draw around that area.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So, now this is where I'm an expert on all this. Did they have porta johns?
Yes, they had two of them
They had two. Wow.
and a hand washing station. So
Oh
it was
wow, they were big spenders then, because I know how
absolute. Yep,
expensive that is. Uh-huh.
yep.
How about, was there food to eat, drinks and all? What was going on up there?
Yes, they had a food truck, Big Papa's Barbecue, I believe was the
Yeah.
name of it, and it was very good. And
Oh wow.
that was the other interesting thing is that the food truck pulled in, and where they had kind of wanted the food truck to be, there was, kind of like a little mud puddle. So we couldn't set the food truck up there. So they
Yeah.
moved him. He kind of had to park on the road. And then once he started that smoker up and started making his food, like people just started gathering around waiting.
Oh wow.
But it was good stuff. I had the rib tips, which very good.
So, would you call it like a YouTube kind of a crowd that was there? Was, and I don't just mean people that have a YouTube channel, but people that follow along, and it's still kind of close for them, so they show up. What was the impact of YouTube there?
I would say the impact was substantial. I think everyone there, whether they had a channel or not, knew of this through YouTube or like knew of like people on social media. So
Yeah.
there were a handful of other channels there, and then like I said, I think everyone who attended kind of knew about those channels. Or I had a lot of people coming up to me. Some people that I met for like the first time, Feel Good Firewood out of northern Minnesota, along with the Minnesota youngster who is always on the Friday Night live streams. I got to meet him and his
Oh wow.
sisters and their parents, who are Feel Good Firewood is the Minnesota youngsters' parents. So they run a firewood operation up in northern Minnesota, and
Okay.
they were just hanging out there, and I gave his kids some stickers, and I had the hobbyist sticker, and I offered that to him, and he declined, and he said, "I'm not a hobbyist." Just kind of joking around, So that was a good little. It was fun, just jabbing people back and forth like that, and just having a good time. Oh, and then another quick little shout out, and I want to give this one for a couple reasons. Munson Firewood. This guy, I think he's like 13 or 14 years old.
Oh wow.
And he was there with his family, and they have a very large family, so they have a lot of hands to stack firewood. They got a lot of
Uh-huh.
workers, a lot of potential woodhounds in the future.
Oh
But
wow.
him and the Minnesota youngster, the one thing that really was cool to see was like that next generation of people
Mhm.
being interested in firewood. I think that was a good something great to see.
Yeah, are they both operating as a firewood company, or are they hobbyists?
Um, it's good we're getting the hobbyist in because we haven't had the jingle play for a while.
Yeah.
I
I don't
I
know what
don't
you're talking about.
I think they're kind of starting out as just a side
A side
hustle.
hustle, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's how most everyone starts in this industry, I think.
Yep. And then
Yeah.
there was another gentleman I talked to kind of later in the day that I think he was from Eau Claire, and he had just kind of stumbled upon the event by chance. And he, had a tree. He was starting out with tree service removal, and he was looking at, possibly splitting firewood. So he had no idea that Wolfe Ridge even was there or made log splitters.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was kind of cool to see, you know.
Yeah. So what was Wolfe Ridge doing though? Were they moving machines? Were they selling stuff, or were they just generating interest, or what was going on with that?
Yeah, they had machines that they had, I think, contacted certain customers that, they could come and pick them up. They had a few machines that were available to buy, and then
Yeah.
they were also demoing and taking orders for, future builds. So like they had their vertical splitter on display. They had a couple of the box wedge machines on display. So it was
Uh-huh.
a chance to either, pick up your machine that you had already ordered, buy an available machine that day, or, place an order for a future machine.
So they had logs that were cut up in rounds to split wood then, or was people up there running chainsaws?
There actually was a representation from Steel there. So they
Who?
had a Steel chainsaws,
Never heard of
the,
it.
the real
But
chainsaw.
never heard of it, but go on.
They so they were running a few saws, bucking up some rounds. They did have a pile of logs there. I think the weather permitted them from, getting too many. I think they wanted to have more rounds cut up, but conditions just
Uh-huh.
weren't cooperating.
Well, I have a bunch at my yard left over. I would have gladly donated them. They would have come down and got it and then brought back the splits when they were done with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was, they had their conveyors there as well. I'm just trying to think of what else. Oh, and their big fire pits that they just
They
introduced.
had their fire pits, huh?
Yep.
That's
They were
pretty
trying
cool.
to get the fire pit going after it rained, and they were having a little difficulty. So I took them a little box of back 40 mini firewood, and that got it right going.
Yeah. Well, then that gets me to you. Now, what were you doing there, Dan?
I I don't know. I was just
Now, what
there.
were you doing there?
What was I doing there? I had for the first time being at an event like this, I kind of had my own little booth. I had my own space that I could
Oh, wow.
set up the mini firewood, and I now have the mini firewood racks available. So
Uh-huh.
you could get mini firewood, you could get firewood racks. I had some of my merch there, some T-shirts, stickers, all that stuff, and then just a chance for people to come up, interact, uh, talk to people, shake hands, get to put a name with the face, all that kind of fun stuff.
So you were selling your wares then. Your
Yeah.
now, do you have many fire pits too,
No.
or you just sell the wood and the racks?
Yep. I did give one
I
away
see
though.
the day, Dan, where you're gonna have a back 40 firewood mini fire pit.
Well, let's just say
Maybe you need to
the
get busy on
thoughts
that.
crossed my mind.
Uh-huh. You
But
are a
now
professional. You are no longer a hobbyist. You are a
that's
professional. It's time to go, man.
that's what's holding me back. I don't know if I can give up that title.
You will always be ours, our
Yes.
favorite one. So yes. All right. Yeah. Well. Okay. Anything else then that we've left out? Anything on the recap? Do anything special happen that you want to share with us?
No, just again, thanks to everyone who came out. Some people I hadn't seen since the last time we had a frenzy, and met a lot of new people, talked to, a whole bunch. I think everyone that did come had a good time. So, all in all, thanks again to Chris and Bob at Wolfe Ridge for putting it on. And thanks everyone who came out. And we'll see. I do believe they are planning for another one next year
Yeah, that sounds
in
exciting.
the works. And I think if they do, I think there's one person who needs to attend next year who has never been up here to the west central part of Wisconsin. And he
Uh-huh.
is sitting across the table here from me.
Well, that was going to be the case, but if we can foreshadow our podcast for next
Ooh,
week, I had a
something
reason
happened.
why. I
Something
had a
happened.
reason
Yeah.
why. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We're gonna have to tune in next week to hear about that, because that was
Uh-huh.
pretty. substantial as well. That was pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was something big happened.
something
So
big. Right.
we'll share that with everyone. You'll just have to wait. There might be some hints dropped on my YouTube channel, but we'll see.
Yeah, you might figure it out if you tune in to the other channels.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dan, thank you for sharing that. And even though that wasn't your deal up there, I know that you still had some involvement with it in your relationship with Bob, I'm sure. So thank you for what you've done and promoting it as well on your live streams and on your YouTube channel. So you certainly did play a role, although you didn't make it not rain. We'll have to work on that part.
That was the one thing I
Yeah.
once again failed at. The weather.
The weather. Yeah. All right. Well, Dan, what do you think? Maybe we strike up the band?
Yeah, I think so because I've actually got my agenda today is jam packed, so I got to kind of
Okay.
ditch and run here
Yeah. And I do too. I got to go lay on the couch. So
in the AC.
in the air conditioning. What the heck? Who? I live in an oven. Ohio is an Indian word which means oven, evidently. So
All right,
All
that
right.
sounds good. So thanks everyone for tuning in and for making the Woodhounds the #1 firewood podcast in the world.
Yeah, and if you could please give us a 5-star rating on your streaming service, because we are on every major streaming service in the world.
Yeah, and it does help. It's
It absolutely does.
Yep.
So with that, Dan, let me just say this. Stay
dry,
and be
cool,
and have
a great day.